All right, let's dive in. If you're a remote worker who's been dreaming of a life in Portugal, there's one thing you absolutely need to know about: the D8 Digital Nomad Visa. You know, this could be your golden ticket to a life filled with sun, incredible culture, and some of the best food in Europe. So let's break down exactly how it works.
I mean, come on, who hasn't had that dream, right? This quote just nails the feeling. It's not just about changing your desk view, it's about upgrading your entire lifestyle. And the D8 visa? Well, that's the official, government-approved way to make that dream happen. So what is this thing exactly? Well, the D8 visa is tailor-made for people like us, remote workers, freelancers, digital nomads who are not from the EU. The number one rule, and this is the most important part, is that your income has to come from outside of Portugal. That's the key difference between this and the D7 visa, which is now really for folks with passive income, like from pensions or investments.
Now, the D8 isn't just a one-size-fits-all deal. You've basically got two options. First, there's a temporary stay visa. This is perfect if you just want to dip your toes in, try out the lifestyle for up to a year, but it doesn't lead to permanent residency. The second option, the big one, is the residency visa. This is the one you want for the long haul. It starts you on a path that can lead to permanent residency and eventually even citizenship. Okay, so that all sounds pretty amazing, right? But the million-dollar question is, do you actually qualify? Let's get into the nitty-gritty and see if this is a real possibility for you. The main requirements are actually pretty straightforward. First, your status. You can't be an EU citizen, and you have to be working for companies or clients outside Portugal. Second, your finances. You've got to prove a stable monthly income, and we'll get to that magic number in just a second. And finally, you have the standard stuff: a clean criminal record and proof that you've got a place to live lined up for at least a year. And here it is, the big one. You need to prove a gross monthly income of at least 3,480 euros. Now, this number isn't just pulled out of thin air. It's exactly 4 times the Portuguese minimum wage. This is probably the most important requirement, and trust me, it's not flexible.
Thinking about bringing your family? Good news, you can, but you'll need to show a bit more income. For your spouse or partner, you'll need to add another 50% to that base amount, so about 1,640 euros a month more. And for each dependent child, you'll need to tack on another 30%, which is just under 1,000 euros. Okay, beyond the income, there's some essential setup you need to handle. You'll have to get a Portuguese tax number, which they call a NIF, and open a local bank account. You also need full-on health insurance. And listen, your travel insurance is not gonna cut it. And finally, you'll need a criminal background check from back home, and it has to be officially certified with something called an apostille. So you've checked all the boxes, you qualify. That's fantastic. Now let's map out what the actual application process looks like. Think of it as a clear 5-step journey to get you settled in Portugal. The path is basically 5 main steps. Step 1, you gather up every single piece of paper we've talked about. Step 2, you apply in person at the Portuguese consulate in your home country. Step 3, the exciting part. Once you get that initial 120-day visa, you book your flight. You're going to Portugal. Step 4, once you're there, you'll have an appointment with the immigration agency, IMA, to give your fingerprints and photos. And finally, Step 5, your residence card arrives in the mail and you can officially settle in. All right, let's talk about the practical stuff. How long does this all take, and what's it going to cost you? These are, the super important questions for actually planning your move. So, let's look at the timeline. Getting all your documents ready can take a few weeks. Then, after you apply, the consulate will take about 4 to 8 weeks to process it. Once you get your visa, you have 120 days to get to Portugal for your final appointment. So, from the moment you start your paperwork to having that permit in your hand, you should probably plan for a 2 to 4 month process. The first cost you're going to run into is the visa application fee itself. You'll pay this at the consulate, and it's actually pretty reasonable, usually somewhere between 90 and 120 euros. The second main fee comes later, when you're in Portugal at your big AMA appointment. That's for the residency permit, and it costs about 170 euros. So while the main government fees are under 300 euros total, you should definitely budget a little extra, maybe 300 to 600 euros all in, to cover things like document translations and other little costs. Okay, a quick but really important note on taxes. Once you spend more than 183 days in a year in Portugal, you're officially a tax resident. Now, you may have heard of a really attractive tax program called NHR, but unfortunately, that's ended for most new people. This means it's super important to get professional advice from a local tax expert. Seriously, do it. Okay, we have covered all the paperwork, the money, the timelines.
Now for the fun part. What is life actually like once you've made it through all that? Let's talk about the reward. So why go through all this trouble for Portugal? Well, because the benefits are huge. You've got the amazing visa, the incredible weather, but also a really high quality of life that's surprisingly affordable for Western Europe. And, super critical for any of us working remotely, the internet is fantastic.
Let's talk about affordability, starting with rent. In the capital, Lisbon, a one-bedroom will probably cost you somewhere between 900 and 1,200 euros. But if you look at a beautiful city like Braga up north, you can find a similar apartment for literally half that price. It just shows how much further your money can go outside the biggest cities.
And that affordability carries over into everyday life. A meal out for under 12 euros, a monthly transport pass for 40, a gym membership for 35. These are the kinds of numbers that make for a really high quality of life without totally draining your bank account. It's a huge part of the appeal.
Whew, okay, we have covered a ton of ground, from all the legal stuff to the lifestyle perks. So let's just boil it all down to the absolute most important things you need to remember.
So, if you remember anything, remember this. 1. The D8 is for active remote workers. If your money comes from a pension or investments, you should be looking at the D7. 2. That income number, 3,480 euros a month, is a hard line. There's no getting around it. And finally, this whole process takes time. Give yourself a good 2 to 4 months to get it all done. Planning ahead is everything. And that's pretty much the whole story. We've laid out the requirements, the process, and the amazing lifestyle that's waiting for you. The path is clear, the opportunity is definitely real. So the only question left to ask yourself is Portugal your next move?